I realized that America's new enemy looked like my family. My father's father had sailed by steamship from India to San Francisco in 1913, exactly 100 years ago this year. My family lived on the land that he farmed. I grew up on that land, but in that instant, hate crimes broke out on city streets across America, and Sikh Americans, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans were chased, beaten, gunned down. And when a man who I knew as an uncle was murdered in the first hate crime after 9/11 in Mesa, Arizona, when his story barely made the evening news, what brave thing did I do? I hid in my room for 3 days. I turned to my bookshelf for comfort. I was a religious studies student after all, and there was the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Guru Granth Sahib, and what sacred book did I reach for to give me comfort? Harry Potter. Harry Potter! Harry Potter, where the bad guys were named Death Eaters, and the kids took risks when others wouldn't. I stopped reading and I looked at my camera on my bed, and I had this idea to film the chaos outside of my window. I was only 20, a woman of color with no film experience. I could not act alone, but it was my grandfather, my mother's father, who urged me to act. My grandfather was the most fearless man I knew. He was a soldier in World War II, so when he taught me a prayer, Bhakti Vanavati, Bad Brahm Shanai, I took it as a secret to his fearlessness. With his prayer on my heart, I wrote my professor, Linda Hess, with my idea, and she said, "You're in a position to enter this unique moment in history and catch the life of it. It's like entering the whirlwind." So I grabbed my camera, I left Stanford, I crisscrossed the country, capturing hundreds of stories of violence. When I got back to campus, the war drums were beginning to sound louder and louder, and I was terrified that war would mean more violence. So my friends and I began to organize pockets of protests through the spring of 2003. We called ourselves the Pocket. And by the time I reached my graduation day, I thought we were actually making a difference. You know how the story goes. The years went by and the wars went on, and my classmates came home in coffins. My high school lost the most number of soldiers in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, more than any other school in the country, and my camera could not focus on all the stories. They were happening so fast: hate crimes, detentions, deportations, surveillance, profiling, torture. And finally, while I was filming an anti-war protest as a legal observer in the streets of New York City, I found myself on the other side of my stories, wrongfully arrested, my arm badly twisted by a New York City police officer, detained in a makeshift detention center nicknamed Guantanamo on the Hudson. Staring at the bars, my useless hand against my chest, it was my grandfather's prayer that rose to my lips, Saktivan Aladibad Ram Shanai, but when I got out, my injury did not heal. The pain was so bad I wanted to cut my arm clean off, but during the day, I pretended to hide the pain. I didn't reach for help. I stayed away from the streets. My story could have ended there. The story of another idealistic college graduate who got hit by the real world, who finally gave up, got real. But it was Stanford who ended up saving me. It wasn't a seminar or a term paper. It was the Pocket. It was my friends who reached out to me when I didn't know I even needed help. And it was Dean Tommy Rood who taught me the greatest lesson that changed my life. He said, if we drive ourselves into the ground, if we pretend that we are perfect, if we hide our pain and imperfection, then we are embodying the very dysfunction and neglect we seek to heal out in the world. The way we make change is just as important as the change we make. I decided that I wanted to make change with love and with joy. So I leaned on my friends. I teamed up with a very handsome young director. We graduated at Stanford, I fell in love with said director and married him. He's right over there. Love is possible, young graduates. And together for the last 10 years, we've made films and run campaigns using storytelling for social change. Together, we've seen the human spirit shine in the darkest corners of the world, in the eyes of children who've survived mass shootings, in the eyes of families torn up by immigration raids, in the eyes of inmates who spent years in solitary confinement, even in the eyes of soldiers I met at the real Guantanamo Bay, hoping and changing for a different world. In all of them, I saw the faith that has the power to surmount even the darkest moments. All of this led me to found Groundswell at Auburn Seminary, where we now mobilize nearly 100,000 people of faith in campaigns for justice. Class of 2013. I still have enormous questions about the future. Please don't get me wrong. I still listen for my calling. I'm still paying back my college loans. It's true. But I have learned one thing. You don't have to be superhuman, or super smart, super techie, or super fuzzy. You don't have to be super anything in order to stand for what you believe. All you must do is keep alive the desire to do good. Just keep that desire alive. And when the moment comes calling, don't lose faith. This is not an easy task. The world can be a brutal place. You have seen this, whether it's gunfire in a school in Newtown, or a bomb that goes off the finish line of a marathon, or news of the rising sea levels, or the widening gap between the rich and poor. Your idealism will be tested over and over and over again. Last August, when a white supremacist walked into a gurdwara, a Sikh house of worship, and opened fire in the greatest hate-based mass shooting in recent U.S. history, I was there on the ground. I saw the blood on the floor of the prayer hall. I thought perhaps nothing had changed. I thought perhaps that all of my work hadn't made a difference at all. And then the phone rang. It was the pocket. And it kept ringing, and it kept ringing. It was my friends, and they were organizing using Facebook and Twitter, letters and petitions demanding that the U.S. government respond. And you know what? It worked. Just 1 week ago, the FBI finally agreed to track hate crimes against Sikh Americans and other communities to protect against such violence in the future. For the first time in history, something had changed. In the 10 years since I stood on this stage, the world has become a darker place in many ways, but it has also become home to a powerful force for good. You. A few years ago, I watched my grandfather's body swallowed up by the Parkinson's disease. He managed to smile at each of us around his deathbed, fearless to the very end. When he died, I was so angry with him. I felt like he left me without teaching me the real secret to his fearlessness. I had the prayer rise up in me, Tati Vanala, and then I realized that I didn't know what it meant. So, like a good Stanford student, I Googled it. The hot winds cannot touch me. I am sheltered by the divine. Tati Vanalati, Bad Brahmshanai. The hot winds cannot touch me. Class of 2003. I'm talking to myself now, you see? Class of 2014. Whatever you do, wherever you go after tomorrow, whether it's in public service or academia or a corporate office or an NGO or an urban farm, You will find that courage is dangerous business. You may be broken and bleeding. You may find yourself awake in the night with a ghost in your throat. You may find your arm twisted, your heart broken in two. But the hot winds cannot touch you if you have faith. Faith in God or faith in goodness. Faith that love can conquer death and destruction and despair. Faith in yourself, faith in each other. Just as I stood on the stage 10 years ago, I look out and I see my mother and father. I see my family, I see my professors, and I see the pocket. I have learned in the darkest of times to have faith in your faith in me. So class of 2013, this is what I would like to leave you with. If you think of your life as a great journey, filled with splendors and dangers and chances to make the world a better place, and you hold fast to the friends you have made here, there will be only one thing left to do when the whirlwind comes calling. Enter it with your whole heart. Thank you and congratulations.